Good morning. Welcome to all of you here in the sanctuary of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Alton, and greetings to everyone who is watching our service remotely. I'm Reverend Dr. Claudia Hall. My pronouns are she or they, and I serve here in many roles, including as our RE leader, coordinator. I'm not exactly sure what my actual title is, but the RE writer. There you go. And I'm also parent advocate at Cardinal Glennon Children's Medical Center, and I'm Missouri's first Kohenet or Jewish priestess. We welcome everyone today to this home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope, for we are Unitarian Universalists. This morning, our prelude is ready to go. Thank you so much, Joy. There is something so beautiful about hearing that music and seeing the sunlight coming through the stained glass windows, and it reminds us of the importance of ritual in our lives. One very important ritual that we have in our faith is the lighting of our chalice. There are so many different ways to interpret it, whether it be the light of reason, the warmth of a community, or the flame of hope. I invite you now to join me in celebrating all of these reasons and more. If you are elsewhere and you want to have a candle or chalice to light now, as we all join together in saying the unison words projected on our screen. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. I invite you, as you are willing and able, to join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life and love, we have gathered here today with gratitude for this community, fear for all the changes the future will bring, and hope that in the mess of it all, we will find the strength to carry on. May we each, right here and right now, find something to cling to in the choppy seas of our lives. May we each, right here and right now, be able to hold fast to that which serves while letting go of what holds us back. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to remain seated and join us in our opening hymn, number 370 in our hymnal or on the screen, All People That on Earth Do Dwell. Please be seated. It is a tradition here at the First UU Church of Alton to place each service within the larger sources and principles that we as UUs hold dear. While we are a religion that has no requirement of creed or belief, we do have things that we support overall. And the service today comes from our fifth and sixth principles. The fifth principle states that we have the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The sixth principle is that we support the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. As we know, Election Day is coming this week for America. As a country, we are grappling with issues of power and vision, and whether younger generations will be allowed to continue to be diverse and open, or if the harsh and rigid ways of times past will be allowed to surge back. Will the many get to express themselves, or will the powerful few crush this country under their patriarchal and religiously extremist views? The right of conscience is so crucial, not just the ability to vote, but the ability to think through the issues and our own emotions that surround them, to see how our actions at the ballot box and in our lives benefit and harm those we come into contact with. Our goal as a faith is for the world to be a community, diverse and tolerant, living together in peace and openness, where justice is actually equal among all people of all classes and genders, ethnicities, education, and any other category that humans create to divide us from them. This goal and this beloved community cannot happen overnight, and it may very well not happen for many lifetimes. But it can happen as long as each of us continues to contribute our bit to bend the universe towards justice. With our principles to guide us, we can create a beloved community. It is in that spirit of beloved community that I invite our kiddos to come forward, and we're going to read the first part of this awesome book called Unitarian Universalism is a Really Long Name. So if y'all want to come over here, we can read a few of these pages. Yep, I'm all the way over here. Hiding. So one thing I want to say about this book is that even though it tries to simplify things, it's very UU in that it has a lot of words. I agree. I get dizzy when there's too many words sometimes too. So I'll try to keep it short. Does that sound good? So the book says, welcome, friends. If you are reading this book, it means you want to know more about Unitarian Universalism. Maybe, I can say definitely, your families go to a UU church, and you probably have lots of questions. Do you ever have friends who aren't UUs ask you what you believe or what your church is about? Sometimes, yeah. I bet. Well, asking questions and looking for answers that fit who we are is really important to us as Unitarian Universalists. We believe, this is something you can say we do believe, nobody is ever finished learning. No matter how old you are, you still have new things you can learn. We keep growing and changing, just like every living thing. That's why we call our faith the living tradition. Who are we? This is why our name is so really, really long. A long time ago, way before anybody in here was born, there were two different kinds of churches. There were Unitarians, who talked about how important it was that there is one God, and then there were Universalists, who taught that it was really important to know that God loves everybody. Now that was really important because way back then, a lot of people said terrible things, like that God only loves you if your skin's a certain color, or God only loves you if you're a guy, or God only loves you if you give to a certain church. So, the Universalists said, nuh-uh, if there's a God, and if that God is love, then that love has to be so big that it can take everybody in at the same time. Yep. Everybody is included in this great big love. Now, when we got together, as over the years many, many things happened, what's important to know is that the two got together one day and decided to become one community. So you have the Unitarians and the Universalists who joined. And instead of changing their name, they just put them together. So that's why we're the Unitarian Universalists. Now, in addition to it being a really long name, they had a lot of different things, and not everybody believed the same. So what we did is we sat down as a community and we talked. And they talked, and they talked, and they had committee meetings, and they talked some more, and then, oh my goodness, they talked some more. And about 30 years later, they came out with something called the Principles and the Sources. Those are the bases that we're in the food. So really, yeah, so you can't have any food. Fancy stuff. You can't have like see, that's what's important about having a community that welcomes everybody. Whether I have to wear weird things on my hands, or somebody can't eat a certain kind of crackers, or somebody can't have milk with their coffee, we believe that if we're going to love everybody the same, we have to find ways that everybody can be part of the community. So, whenever anybody tells you, what is it about your church or what does your church believe, you can tell them we believe that love is big enough for everybody to be included. And we show it by welcoming all. There you go. I invite you all to sing our kids out today. There should be a fire screen. Excuse me. I am very much allergic to fall. As part of our weekly worship services, we take time for an expression of joys, concerns, or sorrows. This is one more way that we build the beloved community, not simply to return to what we had before, but to carry what we have become, this incredible and wonderful place full of love and hope. This ritual that is infused with all the ways we have changed and with all that has remained steadfast in the almost 200 years of this church's existence. If you would like to recognize a joy, sorrow, or milestone, we invite you to come forward and place a stone or many in the water to represent your joys and sorrows. There are stones at the back and at the front. I invite you now, we go down this way and we come up this way, to come forward and choose a stone and place them in the water, symbols of what you carry in your heart. Our next hymn this morning is number 114 in the Great Hymnal. It's also projected on the wall, Forward Through the Ages. Good morning again, everyone. I need to begin my sermon this morning with an apology. As the RE coordinator, I'm writing the lessons for our kids this year, and I'm working a month or two ahead on the RE curriculum so that when I'm here for November, I'm bringing the December materials and so on. So when Mary asked for my sermon title, I was prepping my December stuff on mindfulness, and apparently I was not having a very mindful moment. So I gave her entirely the wrong information, and that is absolutely my fault. I've been trying to match my sermons and what we talk about in the kids' time and things to what the children are learning in RE. And today, they are studying our UU principles as a whole and what they mean for us in our daily lives. Next month when I'm here, we're going to be talking about Bodhi Day, which is the Mahayana Buddhist festival celebrating the life and enlightenment of the Buddha. So that's when we'll get into much more mindful focus. But today we're talking about our UU heritage and principles. Whatever the topic, I'm just thrilled to be here. I'm so grateful to be in this place, getting a much needed dose of hope before having to go back out into the world. And oh my, what a world it is. This sermon has gone through so many revisions as I tried to figure out how to put a positive spin on so much bad news. This week, we have the election, and all of the nonsense is the only word I can say in a church about it. Just the terrible things that some people are doing. Really, we're fighting. We're fighting for the soul of democracy in this country, and whether or not the voices of the many will succeed, or whether it's going to be the voices of a very powerful, very nasty few. Living in Missouri like I do, I can certainly say that I don't feel like there is a whole lot of hope for progress. In fact, after several decades of progressive ideals and progressive values really moving forward in our society, both socially and legally, I think we're in a period of retraction where folks are hunkering down and dividing back up into us and them and not really willing to see the good in others. A lot of that, though, is our perception, not necessarily the reality. I'm not going to lie, it is absolutely true that the ultra-conservative religious extremists have a whole lot of power in our country right now. But what is also true is the incredible shifts in acceptance and welcome in our younger generations. In my own lifetime, I have seen the shift from people who had different gender identities, skin colors, ethnic backgrounds, or human sexuality being literally illegal to being celebrated. Words of identity that did not exist when I was growing up are now commonplace. Even in more traditional settings like businesses and banks, I'm seeing diversity that was absolutely unthinkable when I was a child. I see it in really big things like the legal requirement to offer translators in the medical setting, which, by the way, is absolutely amazing. You know, when you're an immigrant and you do not speak the language of a country, a few years ago, my husband and I were traveling in Costa Rica, which was a wonderful experience, but he injured himself quite severely, and we had to have somebody come in. So I'm talking in broken Spanish to the person who has broken English talking back to me, and I can tell you firsthand how absolutely traumatizing it is to not know exactly what's happening to someone you love in a medical setting. It's hard enough for those of us that speak the language to understand these complicated medical concepts, but then to add on the difficulties of a language that you may not know very well at all. I'm so thankful that it's now a requirement that hospitals offer translating services. Another little thing I saw this week that gave me hope was I was in a bank and I happened to see a picture on the bank teller's wall. Now, this is nothing unusual, right? Many workplaces, people have their family pictures or vacation or whatever. But the wonderful thing about this was it was somebody with a picture of her wife and children hanging at her desk. This would not have been allowed 20, 30 years ago. In many places, not even 10. Have we made progress? Yes. Are there still problems? Oh, yeah. Do we still have a lifetime or multiple lifetimes worth of effort needed to get to this beloved community that our faith teaches us can exist? Absolutely. But we have also made progress, and one of the responsibilities of faith is to help us have hope in difficult times. I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of hope in our political folks these days. I certainly don't have a lot of hope in the legal system these days. There's so many ways in which these things are being taken advantage of in terrible, terrible ways. But I do still have hope in people. In preparing the lesson on the 7 principles for our kids, I was reading about some of the early foremothers of our movements. These were Unitarian and Universalist women preachers, some of whom were ordained. We forget that our denominations were really the first in the world to ordain women into ministry back in the early 1800s. Some of them, however, didn't live in churches that were quite so enlightened, so they were allowed to do everything that the ministers would do. They just did it for way less money and without the title. But one church in particular that I found was really fascinating. The church in Athens, Pennsylvania. Now, if you guys don't know, Pennsylvania is a hot spot for culture war right now. Just turn on your news for 5 seconds. The UU Church of Athens, Pennsylvania had their very first sermon delivered by a woman in 1811. Now, I want to take us back a bit. Let's look at a snapshot of what life was like then. First of all, women were property. They were under the complete control of their father until such time as they married, and then they were under the complete control of their husband. They could not own property. They could not open a bank account. They could not enroll in many schools. The United States only had 18 states, and neither Illinois nor Missouri were among them. There was about to be a war, in fact, the War of 1812, between the U.S. and Britain over the western half of the continent. Harriet Beecher Stowe, the famous writer of abolitionist works, was born in 1811. Huge earthquakes shook what was then the Spanish territory where we're standing today. Slavery was legal in 1811. Infant mortality was 50%. Medicine as a field, as an actual branch of science, was just beginning. Louis Pasteur, who created pasteurization, which has saved millions of lives, and Florence Nightingale, really the foundress of modern nursing, would not be born for decades. Religion in America was very focused on avoiding hell, and Calvinist ideas that you were born already predetermined to go to heaven or to go to hell were very, very large in the world. Abolition was not yet a movement. There were individuals, of course, throughout the entire horrible history of slavery. There were individuals who fought against it, but the idea of it being a movement had not happened yet, much less suffrage. Fact that struck me is something we always think about the Wild West being so long ago. 1811 was well before, decades before, what we would call today the Wild West. And yet that long ago, that land that is so foreign in our past that I really can't comprehend just how awful it was, brave women stood up in the pulpit and proclaimed their truth across the land. And these were the things that they taught. They taught that God is love, that service to people is more important than your belief in creeds. They taught that the purpose of one's life was to serve others, that the gospel was not about salvation for your own soul, but it was about love and devotion to one's fellow human beings. They taught that God was bigger than any one group's theology. Now, we have to look at these foremothers of ours for over 200 years ago and say, did they turn the country around? No. Did they create a fully inclusive society in their lifetime? Not at all. It would take over 100 years and several wars before women and African Americans gained freedom and the right to vote. It wasn't until 1973 that women could have credit in their own names. Indigenous people, they're still waiting for their treaties to be fulfilled by the government. So did these pioneering women set out to change the world? This is something we tend to hold up these examples and we put them on a pedestal and we say, look, these people, set out to change the world. But the answer is, in their own words, they didn't. These women were not going out there saying, I'm going to fix all the evils of society. They were simply doing what they felt called to do, which was to stand in a pulpit and preach what they believed to be the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I say that, and it's really funny because, now our UU churches are so inclusive. But at the time, they were still very much rooted in the Christian tradition and didn't see that their preaching of inclusivity and acceptance was against the Christian gospel. These women did not see themselves as incredibly special. They just saw themselves as called. They did not see themselves as creating something new, but as proclaiming truth that was covered up by society for the benefit of a few. Some of these women were married, while others, history says, were single. Almost certainly a few of them were queer women, lesbians, what we would today call gender-neutral or non-binary peoples, but we cannot be entirely sure if these people and their female companions were lovers or just dedicated friends in a world hostile to unmarried women. History is very unclear like that because we tend to relegate a lesser role to whoever does not fit their biographer's version of propriety. Remember, even if any of these women were what we would today call lesbians, it was illegal and punishable by decades or a lifetime in prison. They couldn't admit it. The ones who had husbands, their husband had to give them permission to stand in a pulpit and preach. So even these incredible women going through all of this, they still fought against patriarchy and all these other things that we're still wrestling with today, and yet they persisted. These women followed their hearts and the religious vision that they had into the pulpit and into the streets, and for some time were quite successful. But, interestingly enough, when women gained the right to vote, and the events of World War I, which forced many women into service and into the workplace, after that, a regressive element emerged, and women got forced to the sidelines for decades. Then in the 70s, women again came to the fore. Only a few decades later, here we are with a regressive force trying to force patriarchy on us yet again. I'm not going to lie, losing Roe v. Wade is a terrible blow to equality, and it's a absolutely blatant attempt by the extremist religious minority to force women and queer people back to the sidelines so that some toxic, rich, mostly white, heterosexual, cisgender men get to remain in power. Now, if any of you happen to be rich, white, heterosexual, cisgender men in this, please note I did put the toxic in there, right? That's really important. It is not about blaming a gender identity or an education level or a socioeconomic status. It's about saying people who need to be in control to be happy are toxic. Doesn't matter who they are or where they came from or what they're trying to accomplish. People that demand power in order to be happy are toxic. And it's our duty as people who know that truth to try to keep them from having power in the first place because they're just going to keep abusing other people. It doesn't mean that they're hideous individuals. It means that they have horrible things in their heart and in their life, and what they need is a good psychologist, not to be elected to office. Now, once you have power, when you need power to feel like a human being, the more power you get, the better you feel. So gerrymandering and the stacking of the courts with these arch-conservative elements are creating an outsized impact, legally speaking, that we will have for decades to come. And it's easy for those of us who've grown up in a world where we've had more and more and more freedoms to look at this and this huge structural thing that's crashing down on our head and just feel completely set aside, completely lost under this oppression. So my question is, what can we do about it? We know the problems, right? We all know, and all you have to do is look at Missouri politics. Illinois is bad, but Missouri is really bad. To know just how awful this can get. Look at what's going on at the Supreme Court. Look at what's going on in Pennsylvania. What can we do about it? That's the hardest thing, is we're raised in our society with this really warped idea that if we just work hard enough, we'll get ahead, even as the entirety of the systems are stacked against us. So as I asked myself this week, okay, instead of it being a total downer of a sermon that leaves everybody in tears and sad to go outside the building, what can I do? What can we do as I beat this thing up? We can follow the example of our foremothers of faith. We can go where our hearts lead us. The right of conscience that we think is so important that we made it a core principle. It needs to lead us to follow our heart. We need to go to the ballot box, for some to the pulpit, for others to the service table, to causes and places that we feel deep within are central to creating a beloved community. Now here's the thing. What I think needs to happen for a beloved community and what you think needs to happen for a beloved community might be different. But that's okay because it's a really big concept. And we need people working in all these different ways and places to get us to the goal. We have a lot of inner work to do as a people to look at our own hearts and our own churches to see where there are systemic problems we need to overcome. I cannot tell you enough how amazed and touched and just in awe I am of this church for choosing to move, even though it's scary as all heck. But the reasons people kept giving over and over and over again is we want our people in wheelchairs to be able to get in the building. We want our people with allergies to not suffer with mold. We want our friends and our family to be able to be here. That is some deep inner work to say, I love this building. I want to be in this building, but I'm going to give it up because I love people more. So pat yourselves on the back. You've done some really good stuff, and it's scary. It's really scary to try to figure out how to move forward in a world where it feels like everybody's trying to pull us backwards. What are our other systemic problems? As a denomination, we are reckoning with the prejudices that have created a majority white denomination, and we're wrestling with what to do about it. If you follow anything in UU politics, one of the big things that's trending right now is the idea of, let's add an eighth principle. And I think about that and I say, well, maybe adding a new principle or two would force us to confront our blind spots. Or it could just turn into bitter fighting and destroy our association. I honestly don't know, but I do know that it took over 30 years from when the UUA was formed to getting the 7 principles. So I do not think this is something that's going to happen overnight. I do know that we cannot allow a statement of common ground to become a litmus test for belief or a religious creed we have to adhere to in order to belong. Same thing, though, is I also believe that things change over time. A lot of churches, a lot of religions, period, root themselves in some kind of divinely revealed truth, okay? So if you're a follower of Islam, one of the core beliefs is that the Quran was literally dictated by the Archangel Gabriel from God to Muhammad. That's a requirement of belief. In many Christian churches, it's the same thing. You have to believe that God literally dictated words to people. Extremist Judaism, same thing. They literally believe that literal God wrote literal words on paper. It's just this idea that their faith is completely rooted in something that is unchanging, unquestionable, and eternal. UUs don't do that. We believe in a living tradition, in an open revelation that a new person who just walks in the door may teach us something that we've never thought of before. We believe that things are supposed to grow and evolve and change over time. In fact, we hold up this ideal of beloved community that comes from Dr. Martin Luther King, and we say, okay, that's where we want to go. That's our trajectory. How do we get there? And if we're going to believe that things change over time, we have to say, well, just because the sources and principles have worked since 1995 doesn't mean they fit as well today. The world has changed. And so what it means to enact, to live out justice and mercy, love and peace have changed as well. Not just the things we need, but the words we use to describe it have changed. I remember as a kid, I was called a tomboy because I was kind of bad at being a girl. Now there's other words for this, right? You have genderqueer and gender fluid and non-binary. These are different words to describe the same experience. We're doing the same thing. Who I am and how I express myself hasn't changed that much, except I finally got old enough that I could dye my hair and everybody thinks it's cool instead of dumb. But when people come in with new words and new language, it can be really disconcerting. If you've spent your whole life identifying as a certain thing and as a certain way, to have somebody else come up to you and try to stick labels on your forehead, it's pretty disconcerting. There's a generational gap and an age gap, and I see this all the time when I'm working with younger queer folks, that they say things, and I'm like, okay, what you're saying and what this other person is saying is essentially the same thing, but you're using different words to get there. For example, one of the sermons that this person wrote in, 1811, this was a big thing. This was huge, and it was agreed upon across the denominations. They said that you use trust in, and I'm quoting here, the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. I wince just saying that now. But the ideals of equality and justice were expressed this way by many, many Unitarian Universalists. So what has changed? Well, we still believe in equality among people, but we'd say it that way. We wouldn't say brotherhood of man necessarily, right? We wouldn't use that gendered language, but the ideal is still the same. As a country, much less as a denomination, we're in a tug of war between the idea that for some to succeed, others have to be oppressed, and the progressive ideal that we try to hold out as UUs that says until all thrive, our work isn't done. We are progressives. If you came here wanting a static religion that has eternal truths and does not change, you are probably in the wrong place. But we do get weary. When I was doing my consulting work and working with the people on the things that other ministers have said that gets old or that gets worn in, sometimes you're so tired from fighting your daily oppressions at work, at home, at school, that having more of it shoved at you from the pulpit can actually be the straw that breaks the camel's back. As a minister, it is my job to help people stretch and grow, but it is also my job to help tend the broken and bind up the hurting. So I'm not here to tell you, oh, you're a bunch of racists. That's not what I'm here to say. I am here to say, though, that we need to wrestle with the fact that as we look around, there's really not a lot of shade difference. What does that mean? Why? Asking questions with openness rather than yelling at people or saying that you're oppressing. I don't think a single person in this building is ever intentionally racist. I don't think that. I think that all of us wrestle in a society where being white has certain privilege. We wrestle with putting on glasses that show us how different people live their lives. We wrestle if we're at one social status or if we have enough money to make ends meet. We wrestle with what it means for people to have to decide between medicine and food. We wrestle with it as progressives, and people who have not been exposed to our progressive ideals wrestle with it even more. There's a tension here. There's a tension between being a bold thinker, having lofty ideals, amazing rhetoric. It's very outward focused. It's very humanist. It says, it's up to us. We're the only ones that can do it. Universalism, though, it's more comforting. It's like a soothing presence, the universalist stream of our faith. It says, everybody's equal already. Everybody is loved equally. And what we need to do is we need to share our hope with others. I think God is calling. Maybe he has something to say. It's Unitarians and Universalists, we kind of have a different method of working, the two groups that came together. The Unitarians, like I said, they were very out there, very bold, very throw-it-in-your-face kind of folks, very intellectual. The Universalists were very warm and caring and let's have potluck kind of people. Growing up, the churches that I was a part of as a kid were very, very extremist. And they had some horrible things that they taught, but you always went to the potluck and you knew that everybody's grandma would be there, right? And that they would love on you. And it's that dichotomy between the extroverted, go out and march people and the introverted, let's just stay here and have a calm community of love. It's a tension in our faith. It's a tension as an association, and it's a tension within our individual congregations. It's a tension we deal with here. On one hand, we got to work for justice. Because as humanists, we do know it is up to us. Nobody is going to swoop in Unitarian Universalism. We don't believe that someday some miracle is going to happen and somebody's going to swoop down and save us all. It's not a part of who we are. It's not a part of what we teach. But We also collectively teach that we are inherently good, that we are enough, that just as we are, and no matter where we are on this path, that we deserve love and hope and grace. I suggest that this tension we're feeling is not something that has to tear us apart. Instead, it's where we need to be living. When we get complacent and we're very happy with the size we are, or the number of people we have, or the fact that it's all our friends are here, we can forget that there's a lot of people out there that are hurting, that need this message of hope and love and welcome and acceptance that we preach. But at the same time, when we get so focused on being out there for the community and doing things and going and being and going and being and going and going, then we lose the fact that we also need a sanctuary to rest and recover and heal. It's a tension, and it's a tension that we're supposed to live into. We all deserve both. Now, some days we need more of one than the other, right? There's an old preacher saying that says you're here to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. And it's really about saying, where are you today? What do you need to take out of this message today? Do you need to look at these examples of our foremothers and say, hey, I need to get out there and I need to do something more. I need to march or preach or just go punch my ballot. Like, these are things that are important. Or are you in a place in your life where you're worn down because you're living it every day? Every day you're living out there in this world in an identity that doesn't fit, that people aren't accepting. And what you need from this place is love and hope and peace. We all deserve both. We deserve a community that loves us for who we are and that accepts us regardless of our physical abilities, our finances, or our past deeds. And we also deserve a community that challenges us, that sees in us something greater, and that pushes us to the edge of what we think is possible, then holds our hands and jumps with us into the great unknown. For over 200 years, others in the Unitarian and the Universalist churches have stood in our pulpits and proclaimed, this is our saving message. This message that we offer is not salvation by divine fiat, that if you believe the right things or you say the right words or you do the right deeds, that you're going to somehow miraculously have everything. The message that we have, that we offer to the world, that we say, look, if you join with us, you too can have what we have found, is that we are both exactly enough and never there yet. This is a core tension that we need to hold on to. And it's uncomfortable at times. It's unsettling at times. It's downright terrifying at times. But it's this tension that each of us individually, when we need to know, we are enough. You, just you, where you are. You got this. And if at the same time, if you're feeling pretty chill and life is good and everything's great, then now it's time to take another step and do a little more and reach out a little further. Where are you today? Are you tired and overwhelmed by the world? Then come, gather around the sacred chalice and the holy water where we join our concerns with one another. Lay your burdens down, for we care for you. You are a child of stars. Rest when you are weary. We joke that our coffee hour is our sacrament, but it's true. It is that time where we come together with others who look like us or don't, who love like us or don't, but who come to this place in seeking refuge, in seeking family, in seeking something more. The lifelong relationships that are nurtured in our coffee hour are no joke. They're absolutely essential for us to thrive as a people. Now, on the other hand, are you scared and mad and ready to shake the world and crash down the pillars of this toxicity that's oppressing so many? Then grab your signs and your ballots, because somebody out there is marching, and it's a you in front probably. We're a gentle, angry people. This is going to be our final hymn today. I love this hymn because it really gets at the core of this tension that holds us together. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are marching and singing and hoping and praying for our lives. There is no need for despair. This is a sanctuary to bind you up when you are broken. But when you have rested and recovered, this is also a place to stage a holy coup, to topple down the forces of injustice and oppression, and to go out and replace these hostile things with our ideals, The ideal of a beloved community where equality and justice and love are actually tangible. A society where everyone is cared for. Where we can conquer the ills of this world. Excuse me. Can I talk without coughing? I don't know. Could be time to end the sermon. What can I say? Wherever you're at this week, that's the heart of what makes us UUs, is this tension. We are gentle and loving, and we are angry and we are marching. We are facing oppression and injustice, and we are resting from the fight. This is meant to be a place to meet you where you are and then help launch you to where you need to be. You are enough, and you are loved, and it is time to go fight injustice, both this week on Tuesday at the ballot box if you haven't already voted, and anywhere else you find it. Amen, and blessed be. Our final hymn this morning, as I said, it's 170 in the Great Hymnal, and on the wall, we are a gentle, angry people. Do we have a volunteer for our... Thank you so much. As the offering basket is passed around this morning, I know that each of you can give wonderfully and generously, be it of your time, your talent, or your finances. There's a whole bunch of different ways to give listed up on the screen. If there's anything else you can do, please let a board member know. Robin is working with our kids today, but they'll be back in, and you can do what you need to do there. Give what you will and what you're able, for you are a generous people. Please join with me in our offering prayer. May this offering equip us to inspire love and seek justice. Let's see if I can get through announcements. First of all, I would like to read you all a thank you note that we got from the kids of Elliott. Thank you so much for your warm welcome and generous hospitality. The Elliott youth had a great experience at your church. Thank you for welcoming them to the meal, the basement tour, and such a memorable UU experience. What a great opportunity for connection and fellowship. With love and gratitude, Scott. Try and make it through, guys. Another wonderful announcement. Can I brag on you? All right, another wonderful announcement. Our refreshments this morning were provided by this incredible and wonderful couple who just got married last week. Woo! May they all know the wonder and joy that is married existence. My allergies are just not having it today. All right. Also, an announcement that there is a taco party and game night on 11/12. That's this next Saturday, correct? There is signups out there. Double checking. RSVP if you haven't already. If not, come, but just bring some chips or something. Probably would be good to help. We just want to make sure everybody can get together and have a wonderful time. And then I know the week after that, for Thanksgiving weekend, Carol's also having a Thanksgiving party for folks. I believe all the signups are out there on the table, but if not, you know who to track down. Are there any other announcements that I missed this morning? All right. I invite you to join me in reciting our prayer as we extinguish our chalice. The light of truth and meaning cannot be put out. We are keepers of this flame until we meet again. As we all go from this place, may we know that this holy tension in our lives, that we must fight, and also that we are enough. That there is always room to grow and change, and there are also always arms to hold you up here in this place. Our service begins as this service ends. Amen, and blessed be. Go forth in peace.